And welcome to another episode of the ADH Dads. I'm your host CJ.
I'm JJ.
How you doing tonight, brother?
Hey man, I'm hanging in there. It's last week I was actually out of state, and as listeners who choose to download and listen to our episodes, they probably saw
The
a
12 of
gap.
you, we appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was out of state and just had a lot of life stuff going on that our ability to schedule in that time was really hard, which is funny because we've got a whole bunch of guests lined up here very soon, thanks to you. And yet here we are with a gap because we just, lots of life stuff happened. So I'm still trying to get through that life stuff and have some ups and downs and just things to figure out. So there's a lot going on in my world right now, but yeah, lots to talk about with respect to that, and all good stuff. I think we have good heads on our shoulders, and we find a way to get through. And I think especially the way we get through is through breath work and talking it out and not letting ourselves sit in thoughts that aren't productive and not helpful for ourselves or for others.
I feel you, brother. Life can be challenging at mostly unexpected times, and inconvenient times. So I feel you there. But I hope that you're doing all right with your stuff, and I think it's a perfect time to kind of sit back and maybe talk about like what that looks like during this time, brother. Like, how do we put our best foot forward um, when people maybe aren't receptive to the example that we're trying to live, or I know we get a lot from a lot of men in relationships too that maybe start this work and don't see the benefits that they want to right away. They'll say my wife doesn't respond to this, or she just doesn't get this, or she questions why I'm doing this, and um, I think it's a good time to kind of pause and talk about like why we do this work in the first place. I know
Yeah.
that I've been kind of thinking about this a lot too lately. Um, as the new year starts and who I want to be with all these resolutions fresh in my head, and as the gym membership starts to dwindle at the end of the month versus the beginning, you know, who do we want to be in 2024, brother? So I'm curious to see where your struggles lie and how you choose to live through those core values that we talk about so regularly on this show.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, I think my gym was actually on point this last week. The hotel had a fitness center. I was down there and working out. Well, all the college kids in this college town were walking by, getting money from the ATM to go buy some booze. I was in the gym working out and keeping up with that. So I'm glad that I can say at the age I am that I'm in a pretty decent shape. And so I was trying to keep that up. So thankfully, some things try to be consistent with health wise. Mental health wise is something that I also do believe that I have a pretty good handle on, but it doesn't mean, I think the thing is like we're we could say that we're throwing curveballs all the time, but that's just life hitting us. I mean, there's going to be so many things that are going to come at us. External forces are what they are. We can't control everything around us, and that's kind of the big key that I know I've heard a lot recently and have kind of harked on a lot myself, is that the idea of what do we have in our control and what's not within our control. And truth be told, what's in my control is how I respond to my kiddo when he's having a hard time. And sometimes what I also need is space, and that's one area where it's a little bit harder to control when I have just my own single kid. I call it like a single parent, single kid, or only child, only parent when we're together. So that basically means we've got a lot going on that he doesn't want to do on his own. He wants me to be involved with what he is doing, and he constantly wants me to be his buddy, his friend, his person to bounce things off of and to show off stuff to. And that even happened when I was just simply going to the bathroom the other day. I was like, all right, buddy, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And I step into the bathroom, and then he goes, "Hey, Daddy." It was like 5 seconds in, maybe, and he was already in there. And I'm just like, "Buddy, that's where I chose to let my emotions get the best of me rather than taking a pause. Instead of saying, "Hey, kiddo, I do really appreciate my alone time when I'm in the bathroom." In fact, truth is, guys, I have a hard time going to the bathroom when I have an audience or I have a participation audience coming on to my, to my time alone. I need to focus on what's happening, guys. The body doesn't like to pause, but it will pause if somebody's distracting me. And he came in, and I said, "Dude, you know that you don't like for me to bother you while you're going to the bathroom, yet here you are. It's so frustrating." And, and then I just took it a step further because I got super immature about it. He had to use the bathroom right away after me, and then I said, "Okay, Cohen, so see, you don't like it when I'm talking to you, right?" And he goes, "Hey, I don't want to talk. I have to go to the bathroom." I'm like, "Exactly, buddy. I hate that when you do that to me, and here you are saying the same thing to me." So I was immature. I didn't have good control over myself. But I think going back to the truth of it is like, when it comes to being the example for people around us, I think it always comes back to, what exactly do I have influence over, or what do I have control over here? I have control over how I respond. I have influence over how people might perceive the person I am, by being an example. And that was a that was a poor example of a good model. It was the opposite of that. So yeah, I have some work to do, but yeah, what are some of the thoughts that you have on on maintaining that?
First of all, bathroom time in our household is a sacred time. There are five of us, and there are only three bathrooms. So, it's coveted. You do not interrupt, and I understand your plight, your challenge, because half of my bathroom expeditions go interrupted, and I just dealt with this today, where I kind of lost my. Just give me a moment, please, from behind closed doors, you know? So I get that, brother. And it's also really kind of affirming to hear you say that you needed to create some space, because the last episode we did, I was talking about, you would kind of challenge me in the question of like, what is something that you do in arguing with something with a kid with neurodivergence? And I said, create space, and you, you kind of said, huh. And I said, "Oh, was that? Huh? Was that a judgment on my parenting calls at the time, or?" And is that selfish? And that's probably my own insecurities of parenting. But to hear you say that just kind of validates me a little bit, and how important it is. Especially someone like me myself that struggles with and has a generational exemplification of anger as the first response. I really have to pause and really create that moment of reflection before I respond. And sometimes I hesitate. Is that a weakness? So thank you, brother. We all struggle with it. It's a part of parenting, brother. I totally get it.
Yeah. Two more examples of the bathroom thing. I was going to take a shower, and I told him, and he said, "Can I be in there?" I said, "Well, buddy, the dogs and you and me trying to find space on the floor when I'm out of the shower, it just doesn't work. It's chaos. It's too much." And then he still wanted to be in there, and then I'm taking a shower. Next thing I know, curtain comes up. The liner's still, it's still holding the water in, but here he comes up, and he's just staring at me. That is the weirdest thing, man. It's just weird. You're taking a shower and your kid's just staring at you. But then the other day I actually successfully had him stay out of the bathroom while I went to the bathroom. And then of course what I see fingers coming in under the doorway and stuff, sounds, and he's like, "I'm a cat," and he starts scratching at the door. I'm like, "It's the same thing as you being in here now." So yeah, still working on that with kiddo, but it is what it is. I think the thing is that I want to circle back around to that, in that is that I got to remind myself, that these moments that I am thinking about look different to my kiddo. And I remember a
Mm,
time where I was looked at as a distraction, an annoyance and stuff by my
mm,
mom. And that didn't feel good. So
yeah.
if I let my emotions get the better of me and that's how I respond to my kiddo, he's not hearing, oh, dad needs some time by himself. He's hearing, I'm an annoyance. I'm a problem. I'm an issue. And he wants me to be, he wants the issue to go away, meaning me. Um, that doesn't mean, we can't try and create that space and create that safe, healthy environment in the process of getting space. But, it does mean that we should really think about that. There's going to be times in the future, I'm pretty sure, where I'm going
Mm,
to look back and think, man, was it really that big of an issue? Yeah, I do need my bathroom time. I'm not not gonna lie. I need that time to go to the bathroom. A little gun shy sometimes it's hard. But there's so many times throughout this last weekend where my kiddo just wanted to constantly have that quality time, which is in truth like my most important love language. Yet I take it for granted with my
mm.
kiddo. So living up to that example of the values that I say are my most important, it looks like reevaluating how I respond.
Well, what does that look like? I mean, I'm curious to know what those conversations look like between you and your son in those times where you do need to create some space for reflection and how you want to articulate your thoughts and emotions. So how do you say that to a 6, 7 year old with
Well,
neurodivergence? In a way that doesn't offend him or make him recluse into his own insecurities.
I think it needs preparation. It needs understanding prior to, oh, I'm going to the bathroom, and kiddos mid, play or something. It requires more conversation up front, and then of course, if you make the mistake, which if I did, to be able to come back later and talk to your kiddo, trying to show you understand where they're coming from, and obviously offering up an apology and what you want to do to make it better. That's the big thing. It's not just saying I'm sorry, but actually suggesting how I'm going to make this better in the future. Like that's the big one for me is honestly like I can't leave it be. I've got to be thorough with helping my kiddo understand where I went wrong and where I can do better, and also still like suggesting, this is time for me. This is my time, and I need that. All those things have to be thought out and planned, and then of course too, the big thing that I've experienced a lot with my kiddo is that I look back at a situation and I sit back into the third person perspective. What is it that I'm looking like? How am I sounding to my kiddo and how is he receiving that? How is he sounding to me and what did I receive through that? How are we going from a healthy interaction to, someone feeling unsafe or not heard? Um Typically when I do give myself that time and space to go through those things, unfortunately there's a couple things that I'll do sometimes where I'm like, you idiot, you did that, which is no help. That's just actually in some ways not showing up for my son, even though I'm doing having those thoughts internally. It's certainly not showing up for myself. I think that's really important to recognize, is that the internal dialogue, and maybe even sometimes we externalize some things by saying, oh, I was so stupid to do that. When our kiddos get to witness that or hear that in us,
Mm.
like that sets them up for that same type of inner dialogue. So, not only if I'm suggesting to my kiddo, hey, you're annoying me. Not that I said that, I never said that, but I need my space and I'm not getting it, and I escalate the situation. If I go around later and then speak to myself in front of him in ways that are destructive, then he's going to carry those two things and make a story in his head about how one talks about themselves and how they talk to others. So yeah, it's a lot of put yourself in check, and when you make mistakes, own up to it, apologize. Your kiddo is very, very much aware of the emotional climate. They're not silly. They're not stupid. They're very much in tune. And if we give them the credit, then we can also work with them and ourselves in the process.
Yeah, brother. I can appreciate that because I fudge up a lot. But if apologizing was a superpower, Apology Man would be my superhero name. And I would just go around just validating everybody in hindsight. But I fudge up a lot, you know, and but me and my family and my kids have had some really good conversations about like maybe what that looks like moving forward. And though we don't maybe always hit that mark, you know, where we set the bar, we definitely strive for it, you know. And the times that we don't hit it, we definitely talk about it. And I think it's been really powerful to our kiddos who um, make a lot of mistakes, right? You know, like as kids, we do, and to show that that's okay, I think sets a really important standard because, you know, I don't know if that was something that maybe I ever felt a lot as a kid, JJ. You know, so if we can maybe start there, I'm not saying that that's the end goal, but if we can start there, you know, I think that it's a good place to be. You know, because we have a lot of talks about, you know, mistakes are okay. And I spent a lot of my life thinking mistakes were the worst thing that you could do, you know. And if you made a mistake, you were just no good. It wasn't, you know, embarrassment, it was shame. It wasn't, I did a bad thing, it was, I am bad, you know. And perfectionism was something to strive for in my family. And it's unrealistic,
Mhm.
you know. And I think the way that we can get closer to it, though, and understanding that is by imperfection, by failing and learning something from it. You know,
Mhm.
by stumbling and getting back up and taking
Mhm.
something from that rather than just crawling to the finish line.
Isn't it funny that perfectionism is like a greater form of fiction than, somebody who works on themselves daily and admits their own faults and flaws and stuff? Like, and then is able to use that to move forward with growth. It's like perfectionism is actually pushing further away from a better place and a better self-esteem, a better picture of oneself. um I find that funny because, yeah, perfectionism, usually the inner dialogue of somebody who suggests there's or perfectionist, is usually more destructive, more hurtful, more harmful to themselves than the dialogue of somebody who admits to not having it all figured out. um I think that's one thing that I'm already seeing in my kiddo that I need to continue to work with him on, is that when we do have a conversation about something not going well, I think there's so much emphasis on the struggle and where things went wrong rather than all the things that went right. So being able to be there for him and support him in those moments, rather than simply suggest, this is what went wrong and this is what went wrong, and kind of really give those things so much power. Giving power to all the positive traits that go with it as well is really important. um I guess what I'm trying to say is, what does support look like if somebody like my kiddo has said this a few times, where he says, I'm just so stupid, or I'm dumb. And it breaks my heart to hear him say that. But how do we have a conversation with someone, whether it's an adult or a child, who says that about themselves? Because that's a fiction, right? It's not a reality. It's not a truth. It's something that doesn't have a lot of basis to it, but it's so easy for us to fall in that trap when we are given some form of criticism and that's the focus. So I would say that one of the things that I need to put into practice on a regular basis, because I believe it serves myself and serves the people around me, is if they say, something like, let's just say, I'm not worthy of love. Um, that sounds, if I were to speak to that, I'd say, yeah, that sounds like it's really weighing on your heart. I'd like to talk about that more, but before we can, talk about that, can we possibly talk about where you do feel you're worthy of love? Like, what are the things that you love about yourself? That's kind of what I really would like to do with my son, is when he is able to identify, which he struggles with it sometimes, identify the positive traits that he has. I think that that gives us back the power to that person who tries to steal the power away from it. So yeah, I'll go back to what I was saying there. So what one of the things that I see with giving somebody support who is maybe in that perfectionist attitude, or is creating the fictional story within, suggesting that I'm not good enough, or I'm dumb, or I'm unlovable, is to first acknowledge that, say, hey, that sounds really hard, and I want to explore that further. Perhaps maybe before we explore that, can you maybe tell me some of the ways that you might feel you are worthy of love, some of the things that you've done that show, some of the smart things that you do, uh trying to give some support and power to the flip side, because the truth is it's so easy to just, when you make one mistake, to just throw everything out the window and be harsh on yourself. That's a perfectionist attitude. Is I did one little mistake, I'm terrible. But that's not like everything that was built up to that point. It has been just ignored in that moment, and it's not been given that power. So when we're able to kind of suggest, hey, that is really hard, and I want to talk about some of the things before that, because I don't want to let them think, I'm just not gonna, I'll let you say that. For example, if somebody says, I'm so dumb, and you say, oh, don't think that way. Well, what does that message received look like? It looks like, oh, I'm dumb enough to think that, and they're saying that's stupid for you to think that. So it's just reinforcing the idea in my head, like I'm dumb. So when we give them the affirmation, and not the agreement that they're dumb, but then have the conversation opportunity in the future to explore that further, by first talking about all the things that we do recognize about us that are smart, brilliant, and so on and so forth, we can build up, and then that power just kind of starts to disappear from the negative statements inside.
Yeah, I think this is really important for our neurodivergent kids too, because man, when my kiddo makes a mistake, she thinks that she's just no good, and she has this perfection mentality. And is that from me? Is this from society? Is it a combination of the two? Because I feel like we are conditioned as a human race to talk about the bad things, but not to talk about the good things. I don't know about you, but the way that I feel subconsciously, for whatever reason, is like the celebrating of the good feels like a gloat, pretentious, um, braggadocious quality to it. But when you say, gosh, life is hard, there's like a sympathy display that we produce as humans, right? Like, oh gosh, I know your life. I know that. I've been through something similar. Man, we're the same. Gosh, life is hard. We agree. We're friends, and we just are conditioned to just revel in that misery loves company aspect of life, and not when someone says, oh, I got that job, I got married, it's congratulations. And then we move on, to the next. Did you hear about Brad? And oh, he got a divorce. We love to talk about that water cooler stuff.
Yeah, I would love to see people, give more power to the idea of congratulating and praising themselves. And there's a difference between gloating and being grateful for, the gifts you have within. Um, I think it was Tony Robbins who says he still occasionally, like, just like literally gives him a little pat on the back. Hey, that was a good one. Pat on the back. What's wrong with that? If you honestly, I mean, because we're social creatures,
Yeah.
a lot of what we do in terms of how we respond, in positives or negatives, is based on the reactions of the people around us. Our internal dialogue only goes so far, and then it has to be expressed outward. So if we have a good moment and being able to acknowledge that about ourselves and say, wow, this really helped me in this moment personally, or this really actually contributed to a good experience on the day for my family. Like, wow, what was that about myself? How did I create those great moments? And what was it that they saw that they really appreciated and wanted to share with me in that? Because that's something big. That's important. That's a win. And being able to highlight those wins and say, yeah, that was awesome. I did a really great thing. That's that's good. That's good. It makes a big difference in how we look at ourselves and our values, and it affirms our values within to acknowledge that. I don't see anything wrong with that. I've had a dialogue about myself that's not bragging, that's not boasting. It's more just an acknowledgement of the work that I've done that's led to many successes in my life. A lot of times it's just based on my own confidence and love for myself that I say it to people. I'm not bragging about it. I'm grateful for where I'm at, and I'm happy to share what I've learned about myself and the wins that I've carried. Because honestly, like, when people strive for something better in their relationships with others and their kids, and they hear that somebody else had this success in this moment, they feel that celebration. They want to celebrate it with the other person typically, but they also want to figure out how they can apply that themselves.
And if there was one piece of advice that I can go back and tell younger CJ, it would be it's okay to fail. It's really like the best lessons that I've learned in life were really through failures. And I wish that I had the wherewithal to learn before the failures. But honestly, like trying to avoid the failures through so much of my life led to so much failure. And if I had just embraced the idea of like, oh shoot, what is there to recover from? What is there to grow from out of this? I think I would have gotten so much more out of those lessons of life. But I was so busy of like, never fail again, instead of like, well, what is the next failure? What am I going to learn from that? What am I going to learn from the next one? And what am I going to learn from the next one? And the more that I can just embrace it in life is really where I feel the fruitfulness of it. So, and it's so hard to implement in our parenting, right? Like I say that and I want to get my kids to understand that, but when they don't pick up the toys or load the dishwasher or, put away their clothes for the 100th time, it's easy to revel in the disappointment rather than to celebrate the one time that they did.
Yeah, and and they'll stick to they'll remember the harsh words much longer than they'll remember the praise. And so how do we frame that? Like the cleaning up of the toys. We had a conversation about that recently about, well, the toys that are left out, they go away for a while. Honestly, like, when I implemented that, my kiddo was very upset when I took some toys away the first time. After that, he's like, "Yeah, I gotta take care of this, gotta take care of that." He didn't complain about taking the toys and putting them away because he realized I was not criticizing his character. I was simply trying to help him and me out. It was so quick, honestly, him getting that message, understanding it, that I was so proud. Because I think the thing is, oh man, let's use a video game analogy. Like, when you make a mistake in a video game, the video game doesn't say, "Oh man, you really are an idiot. You're a loser. You just can't figure this stuff out, you moron." The
How many times did I tell you to jump over that
yeah,
bridge?
yeah. The video game doesn't reward us or criticize us in that way. Yet, that's the thing. Like, we can have some consequences that are natural, and they're meant for moving forward in a positive way, and we can grow from them. Those make a difference, and those can stick with us to form good habits. But what hurts us and doesn't help us move forward, in fact, sometimes helps us move backward, is hurtful words and criticisms and stuff. And the focus on the idea of being bad and not doing things correctly or the right way. When those words are spoken to us by the people that we are supposed to be in relationship with, that's what really hurts us in the moment, not the mistake we made.
Oh man, it's the most hurtful thing when a 9-year old comes to me and says, I just think that I'm no good. or who's created that, you know? Us as the parents, and God, that's a hard pill to swallow,
Well, what do you do?
because in the moment it feels so reactionary, so just instinctual, so just on the cusp, on the tip of the tongue to throw out there, to just get your child to hopefully sympathize with you, to give away your power of your emotions to a 9-year old and say, here, you calm down. And then I would just calm down. You know, what responsibility
Yeah.
we place in the hands of our 9-year olds, 8-year olds. And it's not right, and I'm not saying that the parents that do that aren't right. I do it myself. God, it's something that I have to be active of every day. And usually the rhythm that goes on in my life is I do great, and then I kind of slack on it and come back down, and then realize, oh, I've been slipping. What's going on? Oh, shoot, I got to really focus this again. And then I climb back up. And I don't know if there's such a thing as just like stability all the way through life. Maybe that is the ebb and flow of life. But I try to pride myself on and celebrate the moments where I am able to catch myself and
Mm-hmm.
talk about that with my family in a way that's not like, nah, 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 you do what I say and I know the better way,
Yeah.
you know? And those moments do come rare, but they are there. And the more that I think that we can really close the gap on those moments, hopefully we can set the next generation up for better times than we failed as parents.
Yeah, I'm still trying to apply that magical recipe that's always going to work in the moment. I mean, this last weekend was just a good example of how I started to fail as a parent with my kiddo. It's one thing and it's another thing, and it slowly starts to build to the point where I have this feeling in me that feels tired, feels worn out, feels exhausted, needs some time. And again, with the only child, only parent in those moments, I don't get those moments. And I think that's where I really start to struggle, and I lose all those tools, those skills to show up best for my kiddo. I would love it, honestly, like, sometimes I think about it, I would love it to have a partner who's, like, keeping me in check when I'm with my kiddo and I'm getting worn down, and I know I'm feeling worn down. So, I guess the one thing that I gotta say is I don't always operate very well, and I don't always show the example that I need for my kiddo because I'm telling myself that I don't have the luxury of time and space, and I don't have somebody else to tag team in. So, how do we do that?
Sometimes having a partner doesn't always work as flawlessly as a brilliant tag team duo like the Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage. Okay, for those of you who were in the WWF days, not the WWE days, you know what I'm talking about. But sometimes your partner can be criticizing of how you are handling it at the time, or your needs, or won't aren't as receptive of that. So sometimes those can be an obstacle or a challenge too for a lot of families too, brother. So count the blessings where you have, and maybe some dad out there may be looking at your situation with God. He maybe has some time to himself when he gets to maybe send kiddo to go parent's house for a couple of days. Not to interrupt you or devalue your experience at
You're
all.
good.
I just, I think of these moments in such a way that, like, I do agree that it's really great to have a sounding board off of, and really, like, am I messing up? Am I doing this right? What do you think? Your thoughts? You want to go do it, for a little bit and give me a rest? And, it's always nice to have
Mhm.
that. But I think that the thing that we need to realize as parents is that we're all just kind of as clueless, and we're all, just because I say that I know a lot, doesn't mean that it necessarily applies to your situation, and what your experience has been, and what your kids' experience has been. So I think we need to give ourselves grace in that area. And like you say, just really try to celebrate the moments where we are able to show up,
Yeah.
and the moments we're able to apologize.
Yeah, and to add to that, like what I said earlier, our kids are well aware of the emotional climate, and they have a lot more intelligence behind what we sometimes give them credit for. I had an example recently where my son said, "Dad, you can breathe, and you if you just get a little bit of breath in, that will help you a lot." And I was like, "Yep, yep." This kid probably is like taking all the things that he's hearing and learning, and he's applying them more because his brain is still rapidly, growing every moment, and mine's kind of slowly going the other direction, probably. So yeah, I know that our kids are well aware, and they can be our great partner in the moment. I think what I guess I probably struggle with more is kid talk and kid brain and walking in kids' shoes. Sometimes I have the expectation in the moment that they need to have this same type of de-escalation strategy and understanding that I've learned and can apply it in the moment when they're still kiddos going through their rapid growth phases all the time, and their emotions are going to be a little bit more um, I guess, challenging in a good way to help us remind us that they are growing, and we need to apply our patience and our years of understanding, through our own experience to help ourselves de-escalate rather than, throwing the stuff back in their face and losing all we've learned over the years and then telling them they need to chill out so I can now chill out. That's where I screw up. I think that's where a lot of parents screw up, is that we forget
Yeah.
kid talk. We forget kid walk. We just want them to act a certain way, and kids will never allow that to be the case.
Same, brother. I totally get you. When we're talking about it here in a moment of calm, it sounds so silly, right? Like that we give this emotional responsibility over to our, preteens, and these fully non-developed kids that don't understand and have the words to identify these emotions. We just hand it over and say, "I need a moment. Just you deal with it." Like it feels so wrong, but I think that it's human too, to experience that, especially as a parent. And I don't know about your experience, brother, but the more that I go through these moments, and when I see those moments, I think to myself, I gotta call my dad. I was really hard on him, you know. And I have my issues with the way that I grew up, but man, it's when you grow up and you're sitting in yourself, and you do these unintentional things sometimes when you try, especially us on this podcast, and we try so hard to be intentional, and we talk about intention so much, and when it goes wrong, you like, am I a failure? Like, I can't have intention 100% of the time. I'm imperfect.
Mm, yeah.
But I think like what we're talking about here, being the example through those times, and really being able to go like, you knucklehead, let's talk about this. And I'm really like willing to humble myself and ask for forgiveness and grovel if I need to. And
Hmm.
that's okay to admit sometimes, I think is really a
Yeah.
kind of a powerful thing to teach.
Yeah, and I think being able to recognize that and acknowledge that, not just within, but also with the people in your relationship, is really important, because I think that not, I mean, for one, if you are consistent, more often than not, you do something consistently and how you respond to a given situation, I think that builds trust. It builds confidence in who you are and how you're going to respond in, when others are witnessing. And then if you're able to put to words, what you value and how you want to apply those values when times are, a little bit adverse, that will give everybody around you greater confidence. I mean, how many times has a kid turned to their parent, in a situation because they're uncertain and they know that that parent is providing a certain level of certainty for them that they now trust. So therefore, instead of just kind of going based off of whatever emotional state they're in, they're first, checking in on they're a reliable human, they're a reliable caretaker to help guide or to help serve as a model to them in that moment. Like that's a big thing. I do firmly believe in not just being consistent, but sharing what that consistency looks like with our kids.
Yeah, I was just talking to you the other day about, not to say that step parenting is harder, or anything like that. I shouldn't leave with that. But I was talking to you the other day, and Naomi had expressed that when we were talking with family discussion night, and she says, when Coley yells, I feel like he doesn't love me because he's not my real parent. I know when you and when Daddy yell at me, it's okay, and you'll always love me. But when Coley does it, I feel like he's going to leave, and we're not his real kids, so he doesn't have to be here. And it was honestly like my biggest fear as a step parent to hear her say that. And again, just because it's my biggest fear, sometimes those fears manifest themselves, right? Like, if we're not really adamant about thinking about that every day, intentional about how we're going to tackle that when that comes up or when it shows itself, rather than you feel it and go, no, I'm just going to yell and just walk away because this is my problem. Like, it manifests itself, man. And that was really hard to hear. And I have to work through that
Mm.
filter sometimes. And I have to be
Yeah.
really aware of that sometimes. Not
Yeah.
saying that I'm not afforded the same right as you're talking about of just like losing your shit one day and just needing a minute to go isolate in the pooper for 45 minutes.
If only I could have that time.
But I get it, man. Like I I have to be aware of that she
Mhm.
feels that.
So when you have a fear present itself within, where does that thought process go to? How does action take place?
Well, usually post post event, JJ, because in the moment I'm too consumed by self defense, building up walls, denying the fact, running away from it. And that's something that I, again, really have to be adamant of, even in the good times. And I feel like that's where I struggle a lot, is that teeter totter. I go 3 months and I go,
Mm.
yeah, I'm fucking awesome, killing it. Best dad ever.
Mm.
Don't need to meditate anymore. Totem bracelets? Nah, don't need them today.
Yeah.
These things are annoying, anyways. Dude, I don't even need to meditate today. I'll just get my workout. You know,
Yeah.
just cruising,
Interesting.
man. And then, sure enough,
How does that become a humbling experience? I'm curious about the thought on that, because when you are given that information, there's a lot behind the curtain from what is said. You know, it could be that this kid is thinking, I didn't have a I didn't have a person in my life who stayed there, and that was scary for me. I'm just spitballing some thoughts here. And so she voices it in this new dynamic that she's still trying to figure out and understand. And that's a scary thing for her to brave thing for her to bring it up. But if I were to think about two different ways to respond to a situation like that is the solutions oriented approach. When somebody is presenting to you this problem, this concern, giving that voice some power and then talking through that further. Kind of like what I said earlier too, is the idea that you know, um I'm not good enough. Well, what are the ways that I can be good enough? I can't do that. I can't shoot a free throw, let's say. I can't shoot a free throw. What are the things I can do to try and shoot a free throw? So then when we are presented with this information like, "Oh, I'm a she's afraid that I will leave or I will what have you as a stepfather." What are the ways that I'm showing up? What are the ways that I'm there? Can we talk about that? Can we give power to that? Is that a solutions oriented approach to the idea of being there and, continuing to prove the point that the love and the stability actually does exist and has greater power? Cuz if you were to talk to yourself about it, like, I had 2 months where I was just kicking butt, and things were going great, and then I got hit with that. Yeah, you're right. You had 2 months where things were going awesome, and then a little moment in that whole big timeline took place. That 2 months is so, so powerful. That little moment, "Oh, man, that's just gonna go away again for another 2 months, and then we'll have to talk about it again because we love each other, and we're here for each other, and we give a damn, and man, all that progress I'm doing, it continues to grow, continues to build. Because that 2 months is 10 months, is 11 and a half months. And then those little couple weeks where we're just kind of trying to figure things out, those happen too.
Yeah, we've talked about on the show that, for every bad moment that we have in our relationships, you need 7 good moments to make up for it, you know. So for every letdown you've had of not, you know, unloading the dishwasher and doing the laundry, taking out the trash, you need 7 other moments to make up for that. And that's a really humbling thing for me to think about. Um, and I think to bring this back full circle to where we started with this is creating that space, is really like figuring out what a discussion around boundaries looks like in a healthy way rather than in an incredulous one or one that has guilt, shame, or blame associated to it. So I think that that's like how I can really like widen that gap from 2 months to 12 months to the moments being smaller, is really talking about the boundaries, the triggers, the space, and the accountability of those moments. And the more that I think that we can define those, not only for ourselves, or not only for our kids, but for ourselves, is where I think that being the example really comes in. Because we're not going to be the example 100% of the time, and we are going to fail. Um, but if we're just sweeping the failures under the rug, we're just going to create a lot more obstacles for these kiddos in the next generation. So, how can we kind of pull the broken pieces out, talk about what it looks like gluing them back together, and what use that broken vase can serve now in this family?
Yeah, I heard it said recently, like, if you complain about a lot, you will find more things to complain about. If you're grateful a lot, you'll be finding more things to be grateful for. And here's an example that's loosely related to that. The other day, yeah, I was just kind of defeated. Couldn't catch a moment for myself, and then my kiddo was basically doing the "Hey, daddy, 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 daddy" thing, so much that I was like, "Jeez, it's beating me over the head gently here, and it's driving me nuts." And so I turned to him and I smiled, but it was not a real smile. It was just like "Okay, this is what I'm doing, kid. All right, cool." And then I turned, and then I just I turned away from him, and I just kind of had a frown appear on my face because I was tired of the situation. And then I turned a little bit again and he says, "Oh, what happened?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You smiled and now you're frowning." He caught me so quick. He was my accountability partner right there because I didn't give him enough credit and I was not focusing in on the good. I wasn't being a good example. I was letting the situation take its control over me, which truthfully, that just basically means I took poor control over the situation. I chose to sit with the negative thoughts, sit with the feelings of anger and other negativity that was taking place. And that's the thing, honestly, like we do have control over how we handle a situation, you know? We really do. So if we start to point the finger at everything, the truth is that you know what? None of that stuff is forcing you to be this, act this way, or think this way. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing inside. It's really damn hard. I'm not saying it's like, oh yeah, just flip a switch and I'm happy now. It's not always easy. But the truth is if we keep looking for that negativity, we're gonna find it. If that's what we're aiming to focus on, we're gonna focus on it and we're gonna get it.
Listen, the long game is either a delusion, I tell myself, or the secret to this, especially as a step parent. A lot of the life lessons that I try to teach aren't landing in the moment. So really, like living through what I try to teach, regardless of how the people around me are acting, is really important to my journey as a stepfather. Because I do believe that like one day I'll get a phone call and go, I'll get off and I'll be in tears. My wife will come over and say, "What was that about? She didn't want to talk to me." I go, "No, she just wanted to tell me what a good father I was." I'm waiting for it, brother.
Yeah.
And I get it now. I get it now. I do get snippets of it now.
Mm,
Even with as much failure as I have, in the times I stumble, I really get a lot of like, Coley, I sure do love you, and I know you love us. And that I know you love us is really what's important to me.
mm. Yeah. How good does it feel to reflect back and say, you know what, I was feeling a little bit tense. I was struggling a little bit in the moment, and then I chose to take the high road with it and show up better for myself and for the people I love. And that really wasn't that difficult to do. Now that I think about it, that was natural. Wow. That's what I want every day. Yeah, I mean, my kiddo sent me or brought home to me we'll call it a poster that we framed where he was with his mom and he wrote, "I miss you, I love you dearly," and wrote a rain or drew a rainbow and drew a picture of me and a picture of him. He was slightly shorter, so I think he's thinking he's taller than he really is. But there were hearts, in our chests, and he drew arrows each direction. So it was a two-way street. This only works because we both are sharing each other's love with each other. This only is successful when we show up in a positive way for each other. And he believes in that enough to put it to paper and make an image out of it because it's meaningful to him. So man, I'd like to live up to that every day. I'm gonna screw up, but I'd rather keep reminding myself in the screw ups that I'm capable of the greatest stuff that he sees.
Yeah, I love that, bro. We're gonna make shirts with the little stick figures on there and little hearts that have little arrows crisscross applesauce and I like that. But it is a reciprocal thing, and I think that man, my kids have a lot to teach me, about these little moments too, and those little drawings, just as much as we have to teach them. I think being open to the lessons that they give us and these little nuggets of what they're catching and how they're mirroring it back to us is really vital in being open to that. And I think that there's a lot of love to be shared in accountability as well, and really owning up to, I know thought and said that I was right in the moment, but I love you enough to realize that maybe I wasn't.
Yeah. And to go back to the idea of stating fear, fear is a powerful thing. It's usually an expression about something that has yet to be experienced, or it's an act of faith of it's a pessimistic act of faith about the future. That's one way I've heard it said, and I really appreciate that way of defining it. So when that's expressed to you in that way, um, man, just the idea of being able to express back the love that you have through the history of experience of love that you've given, and then that in that moment of really seeing her daughter for who she is. I think that's kind of honestly what she was basically asking for, and being able to deliver on that is only going to further get to that phone call someday where she's calling you.
Well, what a perfect talk to have. We got a lovey-dovey here as Valentine's Day is coming up. So, great talk, man. Gonna call it quits tonight as we're past bedtime, and the kids I finally hear have quieted down through the walls.
Yeah, I was
So,
hearing him earlier.
so, but yeah, we've got some really great guests coming on over the next month here. So I hope you guys tune in, our listeners here, and if you guys are liking the show, please, the best way that you can support us is go leave us a review on your
And send
podcast
lots of money too.
platform. Yeah, well, one thing at a time, JJ. You got to walk before you can crawl. But please go send us a review. Stay tuned. If you're looking for your lady for a Valentine's Day gift, go check out my Nail Fee Life. That is my wife's nail brand. She works for Olive and June and Glamour Babe and Glitter Bitch and whatever brands she works for. And she'll get you some nice discounts, man, on some nail polish for your lady. So I know that we get stuck on these times of year. If you're like me, I am the horrible gift giver to my wife, especially because my wife doesn't ask for anything material. She doesn't want anything. So I can poke and prod and pry all day of what do you want, babe? But she ain't going to give it up. So you got to be really sneaky about that stuff. So nail polish is always a great go-to. So I'd recommend that, guys, not to selfishly plug my wife's at home business here, but she will give you a great discount. Tell her that listen to the ADH dads, drop that code into her DMs, and she'll get you some nice gift bags here I got this room, if you could see to the left of me here, the whole wall is nail polishes. There's hundreds of them. So help us get rid of some of this stuff. I'll send it to you for free. If you just go there and you mention us, okay? I'll sneak a bottle in there for you. Tell me your favorite. Write in the code ADHD ads in your favorite color, and I'll sneak it in there for you. I got too much of the stuff. All
And
right. So
it never hurts to get your partner, the person you love, a gift apart from their birthday and Valentine's Day. So it doesn't have to be twice a year. It could be any time of the year.
but Valentine's Day is coming up, so.
Yeah.
But thanks, guys, for listening to the ADH Dads. I've had a great time talking with you, JJ. Hope you guys, as our listeners, got a lot out of this. And like I said, go leave that review. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, CJ.
I'm JJ.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the ADH Dads. See you next time.
Bye.